So we are back in Winslow Township in Sicklerville. It's Anthony with Signature. Just doing a walkthrough on this home. As you can see, we came up right over the garage here, but we double pulled, so we used our ladder to get up, then simply pulled the light aluminum to get onto the main plane. But looking down over the garage, you can see that there are 4 shingles, 3 on the front side, which are heavily creased, and the heavy creasing would indicate the fact that they're wind damaged and lifted. We've already inspected them while on that plane to verify as much. And then 1 on the backside. One thing I will say about this roof right from the beginning is that the more sun-driven side of the roof is this front side. This back side does not get as much sun, so the one thing that you'll notice right off of the bat, you can see on the front side where the granules are starting to come off of the shingle. It's a lot more malleable. So with regards to wind damage, when you have wind damage on a shingle that's on the sunny side of the roof where it's a lot more malleable and workable, when that seal is broken and it's lifted, it has the flexibility to be able to bend back. Whereas a shingle that they consider to be in worse shape or beat up, they would say is too brittle. But the reality of it is that a lot of times the more brittle shingle will withstand the wind damage. The shingle that's more robust, right, that's on the back side of the roof, hasn't been beat up as much by the sun, a lot less malleable. These will actually snap off. So they're not what would be described as brittle, but because of the fact that they are still robust, when they bend back, they simply snap off and break. Whereas shingles that are more brittle or malleable, won't do that. They'll actually fold back. So that's what you see. You see symptoms widespread on the front side of this roof. These, you see, we have labeled LWD for left, as in left side of the window dormer. If you're facing the front of the house, this would be the left side. And you have 1, 2, 3 wind damaged, heavily creased shingles. Now, again, they're not completely failing on this side, in my opinion, because on the sunny side of the roof, if you look at these shingles, they will bend back very easily. They're very malleable, very gummy. That is not the case on this back side. That doesn't take as much sun. So on this front side, on the right side of the dormer, you only have 1 damaged shingle, 1 wind damaged shingle. But if you look, this is the open side. Pretty open here, but, a lot of foliage on that end. And then you have just a bunch of shingles that are heavily creased and wind damaged. I think in total, you have 7 on the front side, not counting what's on the dormers, the 4 on the dormers, 11 in total. And then the 3 down on the garage, which would be 14 as a grand total. But again, when you get on this back side, now I flipped this up for the purpose of the inspection. When we came onto the roof, it was found simply just laying down like that. But what you'll see, what I was trying to describe, is that they're not nearly as malleable here. You see this shingle, when I'm applying pressure with this finger holding my thumb, it doesn't bend. It's not malleable. Why? Because it's not been eaten by the sun. It's on the back side of the roof. If they were to put solar panels on this roof, the solar array would go on the front side, the sunny side. So what happens with wind damage, when the shingle is not as malleable, when it bends back, it simply cracks. And you'll find them like this, or you'll find them, folded down, but to the point of almost complete failure. Or you'll find them like this, where they've altogether blown off. So you have on the back side, this one missing. You have 2 others that are significantly wind damaged. And lifted and creasing. Can't see the creasing as well in the bright sun until you get down on it. But all of this creasing is what indicates you when you're standing overhead to check, and sure enough, that's lifted, no pocking on the underside of the shingle. So it's just natural wind damage, and it's common on specifically on this type of shingle, which is only wind rated at 70 miles per hour. And if you look just in the area, right, any comparable homes, including the next door neighbor on either side, their neighbors, all of these homes that are across the street, 1, 2, you look at that shingle, 3, take a look at that shingle, can't see through the trees, but a 4th, a 5th. What I'm pointing out to everyone is on homes that have solar panels, ones that do not, any homes that have had a roof replaced, they have an updated dimensional shingle, and that's the specific reason why. It's much higher wind rating for this area, and typically we don't find wind damage on those roofs, not in windstorms where we simply just have 90-mile-an-hour winds. For there to be significant wind damage on a dimensional shingle, it would have to be tornado or hurricane winds, and it would have to affect that specific area on the roof. So when you see them replaced, they're always being replaced to dimensionals for that purpose. I would say that what's on this roof is typical of what we find many times when we're replacing roofs. They're older roofs. A lot of times they're 3 tabs, and many times we're called out because of a leak where shingles are missing, or the homeowner can see shingles flapping over, specific part of the window dormer or garage. And it's what I would say typical. And in this circumstance, the unfortunate thing about it is you have a backside where it's already demonstrated with the missing shingles. Okay, if we were to try to and attempt to repair this, the way that this shingle system works, right? What you see here, this is what's called a non-exposure. So this is the non-exposure portion, actually, of this shingle below it. You can see it's attached. That's just, where the granules begin, because this is the exposure end, what will be seen. This is what will not be seen. So when this layer of shingle is installed, the tack is placed right there, right? Once that layer is installed, the exposure here, what you will see, and the non-exposure here, what you will not see. Then we take this next layer of shingle, and this layer, mind you, is not here at the time. The non-exposure is underneath, and we tack it there, and so on and so forth. So, in order to repair a shingle that's missing in the middle of the plane, like this one, we would have to then go to these 2 shingles, right? And if you look, these 2 shingles are completely sealed, so they're performing properly. And we would have to use a scraper, disturb that seal in order to get to the non-exposure, or this portion of this shingle, which is located underneath this exposure. The problem with making those repairs on the backside, as you can see, is that if you try to lift a shingle, they're simply going to crack. So in effort to repair missing shingles, we would essentially risk cracking off the next layer of shingle because they're not malleable enough to work with. And what I would say on the front side is that exactly the opposite is true. What you see on the front side, where the shingles have been in sun and are a lot more malleable, when you see this heavy creasing that has occurred, what's occurring there is the wind's blowing that shingle back, yet it hasn't snapped off and just broken like the backside. Why? Well, like I said, it's a lot more flexible and malleable. So it just continues, right, to flap back and forth. As that happens, the granules begin to remove at the creasing point. And that's when you see that crease, which is really just the asphalt portion of the shingle being exposed, where the granules, which are to protect the asphalt from the sun, have been removed. The shingle is essentially failing. But what happens on the backside is that it doesn't blow off because it's malleable enough just to work back and forth. So what you wind up with is flappers with this heavy creasing, whereas on the backside, as soon as the wind brings it up to a certain point once or twice, it'll simply just snap it. And you can see it's most of the way has happened here, where that one's just attached, but barely. And then all of the way has happened here. So on the front side, again, they're so malleable that the problem is when you try to peel up this layer, right? Okay, if we were going to replace this shingle, you could see that's sealed mostly. We'd have to peel those all the way up. Now, if I were to show you just by holding that corner up, if I just press that corner in gingerly, right, and then rub my hands across the shingle, look at the type of creasing that you get there. So imagine going to every place that you see a damaged shingle, right, with a scraper, having to get under these two shingles every time you're replacing a shingle and scrape those up, right? So we're replacing a damaged shingle. How do we do that without creating the same exact damage to these two shingles, which were otherwise undamaged? So you're not able to make that type of repair. When a roof is replaced and it's fairly new, okay, obviously, if there's wind damage to a roof that's fairly new and it's in otherwise good shape, you can go up there and you can make those type of repairs because the shingle is in good enough shape. The other shingles, which are not damaged, are in good enough shape to hold up to that type of repair. The shingles on this roof on the front side certainly would not hold up to those type of repairs. And on the back side, it already shows evidence of the shingles completely cracking from wind damage alone without any mechanical, interruptions. So in my opinion, the only way to rectify the wind damage problem up here would be to tear off the roof completely. You would want to inspect the roof deck very closely in areas, particularly where there was wind damage, just to make sure there's no water damage to the roof deck. And once, you were sure of that, then you'd put the new roof on. But a full roof replacement is really only the only way to rectify this. In fact, any roofer that has integrity would look at a circumstance like this. You guys hear me say this over and over, but if you're offered an opportunity to make repairs like this, we see them all the time. And what we see when we inspect roofs that have those repairs is if the repairs were done good enough, the quality of the repairs were decent, then the repairs are fully intact, but the areas surrounding those repairs have referred damage that have all but destroyed the shingles in the surrounding areas, and we see that all the time. So a roofer who knows that would come down and tell the homeowner, look, that's not the proper way to rectify this, and I fear that if I were to attempt to do that I could cause you more harm than help. You just simply wouldn't make that type of repair. In addition, you wouldn't be able to own that type of work, going in and woving in, new materials with, a roof that's every bit of 20 or more years old.